Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Hey, well, good evening. As I mentioned to the early arrivals, I'm in Texas once again, so I get to participate remotely. So grateful that we have the technology to be able to do this. Last week was that first week, I think, in quite a long time, could be over a year, that we missed the teaching simply just because of travel. So it's a real joy that we can do this from my side. All right, so we've been in this wonderful text, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha nature. And as we've gone through the text, we've gone to, I think, some pretty good depth into the topics. And we spent quite a bit of time on afflictions and a lot of the struggles that we find ourselves in samsara. And so we shifted for just a bit to reflect upon what are these wonderful, healthy things we can do that improve our lives in the long term as well as in the short term, things that are practical and meaningful for us. And so we took a look at the refuge prayer that we just recited and started to unpack what that can mean to us on multiple levels. So I promised last time that we'd kind of finish up on that. So we'll head over there. As the here and now, is your volume working over there? Okay, let's see. All right. So back to this refuge recitation that we just did before the teaching. It's common in Tibetan Buddhist teachings that invite people to join them if they are so inclined. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so we spent, I think, good conversation around that, what it is to have refuge, what it is to find a safe place, something that's reliable, that you can depend upon. And our emphasis went to the Dharma itself, the ultimate truth, the truth of things. And kind of nice to think, well, there's a lot of things I cannot take refuge in that are durable and reliable. Netflix, some people take refuge in. Our partners sometimes take refuge in the house, the economy, the things that we put our time and energy in. Then none of those really can offer that long-term, constant, always there type of safety, but the truth, the Dharma, the truth. And when we think about that in terms of our personal experience, our authenticity, and then ultimately how things are, how are things existing to us. And of course, with Buddhism, the whole point of Buddhism is to know the truth. That's how we free ourselves. We free ourselves from suffering by knowing the truth. And it begins with very simple things like my emotions are temporary. So good Western psychology, we can explain that truth. And it doesn't have to be anything super mystical. We've been exploring truth, and a whole bunch of philosophy majors out there that are doing the same thing. Today we have quite a bit of emphasis in learning about happiness and joy and as well as, this, we've had so many years on depression, anxiety, and so forth, but now we've got these studies on happiness and joy, positive psychology, and so forth. And what come to realize is that a vast majority of our suffering comes from things that aren't true, right? Mental and emotional exaggerations and projections and worries and fears about things that haven't happened and so forth. So we can see how just living more in reality, living more in acceptance empowers us. It empowers us to live in a way that's cutting through an enormous amount of suffering. I think we can all recognize that a lot of our worries, fears, stress, anxiety, all of that is not right here in this moment. It's in our minds. And it's in our minds in a way that attaches and clings to things as though they can provide real happiness and stability that they can't. So now what can they do? And they can provide some stability and some happiness and connection and purpose and meaning. So these are things to know. What can provide us with some purpose, happiness, well-being, and what are the limitations? I was sometimes hear me say that right now we can be thinking what I really need is a vacation. Got a lot of stress, got a lot of worry, and vacation. Maybe go to Kauai, right? And I like to use that example because I was in Kauai with Laura, and I saw someone who was very unhappy in Kauai. They're visiting and they're very angry. It was over a parking spot, and it was just ruining their vacation. But the illusion or thought is, man, if I was in Kauai, I could be sitting on the beach right now. It's all going to be good. Again, it's in my mind. It's not what's happening. And the other day I was talking with a friend who happens to be in Kauai. And he was talking about all the stress from his work that he brought with him on his vacation and how difficult it was and how his partner wasn't having the same priorities he wanted to have in Kauai. And now maybe if she was different, he could be happy. And, but he was watching his mind go through all this in a beautiful space. And, he did shift. And, but the point being is that we have the capacity to get pretty worked up about things. Guess I can take that down for the moment. This is all my intro. We haven't got to the teaching part. So those of you who've been here all the time, you realize this. So with this, we can just a simple analogy like that, someone who is going there and in a beautiful place like Kauai can be struggling, and even talked about some things cost more than they thought. Now they're thinking about his budget, and now we're stressing over what we're doing and how we're spending our money and not enjoying a vacation. All of these things are mental processes. He's still healthy and well, they can afford it, they're in Kauai, and he is now, he is today doing all that, but there was a journey to get there. So can we take refuge in something that's dependable, like if I live more in reality, I'll suffer less? Well, we can't just say that and go, well, okay, that makes sense. So we test it out. Does much of my suffering come from my mental and emotional projections, exaggerations? Does my stress relate to outcomes that are true or not? Or am I projecting a lot into them? And we work our way through that. And you test it and you see it. Well, if that's true, okay, then I've got something I can depend on a little more, and I try a little more, and I try a little more, and I try a little more. So as we always say, Buddhism is based on experience, and truth is something that has to hold up to tests. We have to get the results. It's not just, I read a book, this is the way it is, now I have faith, blind faith. Doesn't work very well. So we unpack that. And now the second part of that verse is a path. We have something to rely upon, this Dharma, and the teacher and the support, the sanghas and the groups that we have. And now there's a path. And this is what I think is just so empowering for me personally. The path of a Bodhisattva, the 6 perfections. They can be engaged with at multiple levels. All the way from, I would like to just not suffer less, be a good human being, all the way to, I have the aspiration for a Bodhisattva, complete liberation, Buddhahood. And each of these 6 can benefit us from a multiple perspectives, depending on where we are at and how we relate to the world and our experience. In essence, there's no downside, all the way up to full Buddhahood, to I'm a human being who would just like to be a little happier and struggle less and understand myself more. So let's take a look at that now. So next line here is through the positive potential. So we're creating these potentials that I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Now, it's really the idea of a Bodhisattva path. I'm doing this for the benefit of others, not just for myself. And we see here the 6. And we had a good discussion on generosity, I believe, last time. Been a couple of weeks. Thought we got to generosity. And I just want to touch on these. But I also want to point out that for me personally, to know them when we say them, to know that the path is here, to know that there's this opportunity available, and to be very specific, is really helpful for me. Most of the time, if you see these verses, so the Tibetan's directly above, and you'll see it translated through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes. So unless you know that the other far-reaching attitudes are the 6 perfections, generosity, and the other 5, people are saying this all the time, and they're not sure what they're talking about or what they're invoking. And so for me, I think it's really nice to say, okay, instead of just generosity and far-reaching attitudes, let's be very clear about what they are: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous, and concentration, wisdom. And that way, every time I say it, I'm reminding myself of this path, this path of freedom, this path of health, this path of well-being, this path of awakening. And so each of these, provides us a way of engaging our lives at whichever level we're at. And we talked last time about it's important to be realistic and honest about your level. We may not be reaching for full Buddhahood. We might be reaching to, be a little healthier in our relationships, and to struggle a little less, and to know that that's okay. That's where we're at. If I do this and it starts working and my relationships get better and so forth, and as I continue to unpack the truth as I understand it, more things can be revealed, and maybe that motivation shifts. Maybe it doesn't. But that's everyone's individual journey to interact with these skills. And what I find is that, now I remember a discussion. Was it the monthly retreat? Yeah. I'm trying to pick up the word, but a great discussion on at some point you can just say, yeah, this is something worth my time and energy. I'm all in. Is it Pasquale's gamble? No, somebody's gamble. And basically to say there's no downside, right? There's just no downside. I'm just working on the quote, but I'm going to get right back to it. There's no downside here. And so that's for us to explore. So back to the sixth, we looked at generosity, and the idea then with generosity is that first and foremost, all our lives are interdependent. All of our lives are interdependent, and there's really nothing independent about me. Okay. We've talked about that at great length. So understanding that my words, my thoughts, my body, so forth, is all arisen because of others. And we impact each other. One of the real struggles to create anxiety, stress, worry, and fear in our lives, that's attachment. Okay. And I need this, and I come from a place of scarcity. I worry about that, and I need to watch my 401k, and I need to watch these things. I need to have this stuff to be okay, maybe a partner, maybe a particular, level of standard of living or whatever those things are, or, whatever we wind up getting attached to, and it becomes very important to us. And then there's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety over losing that. And if it's not, your partner is not the way we would like them to be, and so forth. So, so generosity is the opposite of attachment, right? It's an openness. We have enough. We can share, and as I share, not only do I suffer less because I'm not thinking about me, I'm thinking about we, and the more that you are happy and your needs are met, then we're all going to benefit. It's the old, the rising tide lifts all the ships kind of thing, right? Now, we don't talk about generosity in a sense of giving our last dime, or, we always take care of our needs and we give. My teacher was always really, really big on that. It was even when about donations, he'd always make the announcement, make sure you have your needs met before you make a donation to the temple. As a matter of fact, it was kind of hard to find the donation boxes in the center. They usually enter a pile of like prayer books and stuff. So in case you're wondering where the donation thing is, our center, it's right out in the lobby. But always make sure your needs are met first, right? So start there. Pascal, thank you, Keith. Pascal's wager. So generosity is going to alleviate attachment. It's going to recognize interdependence. It's going to get me out of the root cause of my mental, emotional suffering, which is I, self, and me, thinking about me, independent, separate from, and relating to the world by whether somebody likes me, doesn't like me, somebody's beneficial to me, somebody's not. This thing makes me happy, that thing doesn't make me happy. The world should be like this, and people should be like that, all coming from a real sense of I, independent, separate. Generosity can, really come through in a capacity of having me think more in terms of we instead of me. And then again, back to regular research, the more we focus on ourselves, the more we're in a default mode about what I'd rather do. Some of you might be thinking about Kauai right now, I don't know. And things that would make us happy or things that are frustrating me, that default mode that our mind comes to creates a lot of stress, worry, fear, and distraction. the more I recognize I am connected and I'm a part of things. That, the world we live in is a we-centered world, not a me-centered world. And I'm a part of something quite wondrous that's unfolding moment to moment. And that everything that's arising is really an opportunity to grow, to learn, to understand myself, to improve myself, the world we live in, to build connections, to develop resiliency. A lot of opportunity. Well, then I'm suffering less. And so generosity becomes this incredible tool to counterbalance my primary course of thinking about me and what I do and don't have and so forth, and the attachment. So we could see whether you're on a Buddhist path or a human being, that's going to make a big difference in how we engage in the world. And then ethics. So generosity, ethics. And those of you who've been around a while, I don't even need to tell you that how much better we feel when we do things we feel good about, and how we feel less than insecure when we do things we don't feel good about. And from a Buddhist perspective, it's very straightforward that all lasting happiness and good comes from virtue, and all suffering from non-virtue. So we can play that out in a variety of ways, whether it's that's core Buddhist principle. And we can test it. It's also Aristotle, Plato. It's also wisdom traditions in terms of, going within indigenous as well as ancient spiritual traditions. And as I've mentioned many times, my Little League coach. So, there's this emphasis on ethical behavior, of morality, of engaging in the world in ways that you'll feel good about, that honor your values and the way we live with each other. We know it when we lie. We know it when we do things we don't feel good about. We know it when we haven't been entirely honest to gain something, or we've harmed people. So this becomes just a real incredible way of living, and a real freedom around clarity of my choices. So the 8 worldly concerns: gain and loss, pain and pleasure, good reputation, bad reputation, praise or criticism. These are driving motivation factors for humans since the dawn of time. I prefer pleasure over pain. I seek praise over criticism, gain over loss, good reputation over bad reputation. And from the moment I wake up till I go to sleep, they're usually at play somewhere in my life. Is doing this, getting what I want? Is it fearing I might lose something? My reputation, making sure that's good. Just even how I dress, is just the appropriate attire for the occasion. What will people think? I went with maroon, figured, Buddhist thing. So all day long, we're engaging in activities motivated in this way. And then sometimes we have dilemmas and choices to make. And when our choices are based on ethics and not the outcome, then there's just so direct clarity about life. I'm going to engage in this thing because it's the right thing to do, whether I get what I want or lose it. I'm going to do this, in alignment with my ethics, whether I receive praise or criticism. I'm going to engage in these ethics, regardless of whether it's going to give me some pain or some pleasure. Those become secondary. They're still important, but they're not the primary. And there's just such clarity. What's the ethical thing to do here? What's the meaningful thing to do here? What's the honest thing to do here? And then, we can find that we can get a lot of things we want, and we can do it in a way we feel good about. But what is always going to matter is our ethics. And that's going to bring peace of mind all the way up to the foundations, nurturing, fertilizer of awakening. And the more that we engage in that from a Buddhist perspective, shifting to that, it's our ethics that clear away the obscurations that prevent us from really soaking in the wisdom of the teachings in our life lessons, to understanding ourselves and our experiences. So as we engage in virtue, cultivating merit, it's removing this big thick layer of obscuration, and then we're reading a teaching that we didn't understand sometime before, reading a teaching now, and it's like, oh, yeah, I kind of get that now, or it has a different context for me now. And then just back to human, no religion whatsoever. There's so much more peace of mind that I have nothing to hide, that I'm living in alignment with my ethics and my values, and I'm treating people well. And I'm going to immediately have that sense of well-being. There's a safety there. There's a refuge there. So generosity, ethics, patience. Patience is the key to it's the antidote to anger. It is I think for me, and just going back to our human Western psychology mind, it's really a key to executive function in our capacity to have some choice and to make choices that are much wiser and to be able to act upon them. Patience is the ability to endure some discomfort. And when we are impatient, our mind is just taking us wherever we want, or no, wherever the mind wants, not where we necessarily want to go. And there's no real opportunity to shift. We need to be conscious. We need to be able to feel something, and then instead of react, respond. And that's going to require the capacity for executive function, understand the bigger picture, short-term pleasure, long-term pleasure. What's a healthy thing to do here, and can I act upon it? All that to happen, a great degree of patience can be required, the ability to feel some discomfort, to not be reactive, and to give yourself an opportunity to make a healthier choice, to access, again, our executive function. So right off the bat, you can see where that would be more helpful. And then, again, from a Buddhist perspective, one of the biggest troublemakers as far as mental afflictions that we have is anger. We get frustrated, we get angry. It's not necessarily that we're rageful and we're yelling at people, but we can get very frustrated with people. We can get angry at people. We can get agitated, and patience is going to give us the ability to have those sensations and not be a prisoner of them. Have the opportunity to recognize that those emotions that are arising, they've been triggered, but they're not who I am. I don't need to react to them. With patience, I can experience them. And when I'm in a calmer state of mind, then I can respond. And just think about how many times in our lives we wish we hadn't said that thing, or hadn't, right off the bat, that reactivity. When we're angry, that's not the time to send that email, let people know what you think. Let's pause that for a bit. Think it through, take some breaths, calm down. Then we have, again, not much executive function in anger. It's very limited with our choices and our capacity to see and experience things. So patience is also how we learn anything. If I'm learning a language, I get to have some patience. If I'm learning about myself, I would like to give myself some patience. Patience and delayed gratification are things that we try to teach children, delayed gratification. But how good are we at that? How good are we at really bringing in what's the long-term experience I'll have, when I engage in behaviors I feel good about? And because it takes a while to get that sensation. And now we're in such a, smartphone. Oops, there we go. I lost my phone if I put it over there. Wow, how distracted are we? Where's our patience? Where's our attention? And where's our capacity to have conscious choices? So again, on a very mundane level and human and stuff, we'll can see how patience right off the bat is going to improve our relationships, our work situations, our capacity to make healthier choices, have more executive function. So I'm going to pause there just because I've been talking for a little bit. Hopefully you've been patient with me. And just kind of see if anyone has any thoughts or comments. And in terms of just these opportunities that are given to us about things that we can do to improve our life from the moment we are in now all the way up to Buddhahood, depending on which level we're engaging with them. Yeah. Oh, I see movement at the Here and Now Center.
Hey, John.
Hey.
Oh, I had a question about if somebody's maybe been suppressing their emotions for a long time, and so then they, don't even maybe know what they like or know, kind of what direction to go in their own life. Just, it seems like it might be good to feel some of those emotions.
We're actually suggesting you feel all of them.
Okay.
Suppression is not going to help any of this. The idea is that as patience allows you to feel feelings. We're not shutting anything down. The good choices that we're making, sometimes they're hard choices. And but there are things that we're going to feel good about in the long term about how I showed up. And so those are sometimes those tough conversations that we need to have. It's not going to feel good, but it's important to do if we want to, have this relationship or, friendship, whatever that is. So so the point here is not to not feel feelings. It's when we the analogy that was always used when we stuff feelings or try to, write them off. It's like trying to block a river, and it's just going to overflow, right? It's going to overflow, and then we're going to blow up. And we feel the feelings, we experience them, and we, through that process that we do it mindfully, we'll recognize that they're impermanent, they don't last. But they're information, and they're telling us they're how we connect to others. That's how we connect to ourselves. So, very important to feel feelings, and even, especially the difficult ones.
Okay, so just finding kind of a balance of feeling what's coming up, but maybe not acting on everything, or finding that maybe.
Yeah, the capacity to experience feelings and not be reactive, but be responsive. And it's funny that you asked this question because we just earlier today had a different session with a bunch of DBT therapists, dialectical behavioral therapy clinicians, and you know, and that how important it is to know about the impermanent nature of emotions. You know, that yeah, they're strong, they're coming, they're not going to last, and how core that is for well-being, the importance of recognizing that impermanence. It's how I feel in this moment, but it's not maybe even how I'll feel 10 minutes from now or an hour from now, and so forth. And that capacity to use a wise mind, to use that information of the emotion. What am I learning from it? What's going on? And then what would be a healthy way to work with it? So that's where patience would give you some of that opportunity, but not to stuff them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to ask that, because it's funny when some people, you know, they look at Buddhism and they go, wow, the Buddhists, man, pretty stoic. You know, all they do is talk about suffering, and, you know, they're all so serious. And, you know, it's like, yeah, no, not getting angry, you know. Where's the passion in that, you know? And, you know, look at a bunch of Buddhists, they're joyful and bouncing around and yeah, feeling feelings. I haven't seen the Dalai Lama cry, you know. You know, the difference is we actually get to fully feel them. Because you're not as tied to needing something to be this way or that way. But with full equanimity, you can have appreciation instead of attachment. You can open your heart up, you know, even more deeply. And you can have some fun in there too. Okay, so if you guys are going to be like that, we'll look at joyous effort. There's a whole retreat on that coming up. And so again, I'm just touching on these. There's big teachings on all these that we can do. But for me, the inspiration is that I can see how I can do these things right now. I can be a little more generous. And by the way, with generosity, it's not about money and this and that. Can be. But how generous am I with my time? How generous am I with my attention? That's generosity. Yeah, giving people our attention. Generosity. You know, in our ethics, patience, joyous effort is really about seeing the value in the things that we do. And that everything I'm doing is either adding to my life in a meaningful way or it's not. And if it's not, how about we don't do that? Yeah, that'd be a key. It's amazing how much we can improve our lives by simply not doing a lot of things. You want to really improve your life, stop doing all those bad habits and distractions and all the things that clutter up our life. I mean, you want to be happier, stop doing stuff, okay? Just stop doing those things. And so joyous effort is really going to be based in seeing the value of the things that we do. And I know some of you, we've talked about this in great length, and, you know, Keith's a good embodiment of this. I know is you know, we can turn our most precious things that we do into work or chores. And, we get to live in a wonderful house. We get to caretake people. We get to do things that are meaningful, that are purposeful. We get to go to a job that helps people. And then we can turn the job into work. And we can turn cleaning in our house into a chore. And we can get burnt out, helping a dear loved one. But with joyous effort, it's quite the opposite. We get to see what a wonderful place we have that we live in, and how cool it is to wash dishes, because I have dishes, and what a wonderful journey that is. And this job I'm doing, look at how it helps me and others, how it provides me for the life that I have. And in this job, there's so many ways that I can impact people, and they're very subtle, and unless I start paying attention and taking care of our loved ones, wow, don't we deeply value that, and what an opportunity that is. And these things that we can be doing, that we can actually turn around to, they become chores and work. And then my reward for chores and work is distraction and a bunch of bad habits to feel good temporarily that will undermine my lasting happiness and my well-being. And then I get caught up in a weird cycle of turning all the things that are truly important to me into work and chores. And then the reward are the things that undermine the things that are very meaningful and purposeful. And then with joyous effort, it's quite the opposite. It's as Mark Maloney would say, it's purposefully engaged. It's recognizing the value of the moments in your life, the opportunities they present, and the legacy of your actions. And making a list of, if you had to make a list of what was truly meaningful in life, it's going to have a lot to do with how we engaged in the things that we did, and recognizing that value and seeing the joy that arises from seeing and honoring that. We did the last monthly retreat on this valuing virtue, and then it's like, wow, I get to do these things. Now, having said that, it all sounds good on paper or in an audio or in a webcast. But it is much, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of discipline, a lot of practice. And it requires bringing your mind to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then catching yourself when you go off, and a delayed gratification experience. So again, joyous effort is initially a lot of effort. And then it becomes like, why wouldn't I be doing this? Like, this is the thing that is most important and I get to do. So that would be pretty good in our lives. And then just looking at the time, last two are pretty straightforward: concentration and wisdom. If I don't have attention, presence of mind, mindfulness, concentration, if I don't have any ability to direct my attention and have the capacity to attend to something in a different way, I'm a prisoner my whole life to my habits, my worries, my fears, my mind, my impulses, my conditioning. And so the practice of concentration, which includes this mindfulness, this presence of mind, training the mind, taming the mind first, then training the mind. Wow, what a different universe when we can actually choose one thought over another. You want to talk about transforming your life? Develop that capacity. Here's a thought and an impulse. Well, here's another one I'd rather do. And worry, fear, anxiety, or gratitude, and skillful methods, which is it? Worry, fear, anxiety, or opportunities and resiliency and growth, and the same activities. Is this really a difficult situation, or is it an opportunity to grow? Is it, all that has to do with how I attend to something. Concentration gives you the capacity to develop the muscle of attention and have a choice about how you attend to it. What kind of mind would you like to bring to it? And wisdom is the ultimate freedom, which is really, and it starts with just simply understanding very fundamental, basic things that we often don't think about, like our interdependence, or, the reality that that person's not making you mad. They're triggering anger that is within you. And it's so much nicer to know. Well, I don't know, initially, maybe it's not nice to know that, the real cause of your anger, frustration is within you. Okay. I mean, initially, maybe it's kind of not as fun because it's pretty easy to point at, Jimmy over there. But what happens is you're no longer a victim. You're now empowered. When I know that the seeds of my emotions are within me and that my experiences activate them, then I am now empowered to work on the root causes of these emotions and attitudes and feelings and fears and so forth, and afflictions. And I can start working on this, and I'm empowered to do something. I can't change you, right? And I'm not a prisoner of that. And so that big shift to start to understand just the capacity that we have to shift based on understanding ourselves and our experience better is incredible. So wisdom is really going to empower us to start working on the things that really impact our lives in the most meaningful ways, understanding how we experience thoughts, feelings, emotions, how they're influenced by environment, and how our choices, our habituated choices can either be a problem or be a benefit. And ultimately, then to the Buddhist path, it is what liberates you from samsara. And, that the understanding direct experience of the ultimate nature of how this thing works. And that was the Buddha's big innovation. He just said, well, we're a prisoner of our misperceptions. And once you gain clarity, you're not going to do all those karmic things. You're free. You're not going to be caught up in it. You're liberated. But on our initial level, we can learn about how emotions work, how our experiences work, where true happiness comes from, where true suffering comes from. And we can start making choices based more in reality instead of my fears, worries, and anxieties. And have a wise mind, as DBT would say, and develop that to a greater degree. Eliminate all of our thinking errors or distortions that cognitive behavioral therapy would talk about. And so again, in all of these 6, we can engage in at any level, starting to be a little more generous, starting to pay more attention to our ethics and values as we make choices, developing some ability to feel uncomfortable so that we can have access to our executive function and make a wise choice. Recognize the value of what you're doing. Have some joyous effort. Our meditation practice we did at the start helps concentration. And wisdom is going to be this ongoing experience of exploring how you exist and how you experience the world. And they all feed each other. None of these are independent. As they're all very interwoven. And wisdom, can factor in all of these. And so all of these will support each other. They're not 6 separate things in a sense. They all, intertwine. And so for me, I just thought it was a nice little detour out of the book for a bit to recognize some incredibly powerful direction that's written in just a couple sentences that we often will say every day. You might know that maybe the whole thing's right there. And we don't want to just skip over that. We can talk about lots of, mental factors and all these things. But fundamentally, if we can just be kinder, recognize we're interdependent, be aware of our ethics, make sure we get our mind clear so that we can access and make the choices that are meaningful. And just do it a little bit more each day. Just a little bit more each day. It's, we're not gonna, okay, I got the direction books, I'm good tomorrow, gonna nail this. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna work a little bit, and I'm gonna get mindless, I'll get mindful. But over time, as we experience it directly, we become wiser, more capable, our lives become better, our resentments lessen, our capacity to, endure afflictive emotions gets better. And over time, we'll find that whether we're engaging with this on a level of just wanting a human life to feel better, or a full Bodhisattva path, or anywhere in between, these same 6 fundamental teachings on these 6 perfections are just a clear guide to improving the quality of one's life. So that's what I have to say about that today, anyway. So any thoughts, curiosities, comments, questions, or cat jokes? Okay, Martha.
I'm so grateful that these particular 6 perfections that you presented information on these today. I say them every morning 3 times, with heart, and to actually have it expanded on, and I read, and then, but your words have really added a level, John, to my understanding of what these are. And it's like everything I'm hearing of late comes back to just, boy, I'm sorry, I didn't know I'd be quite so
Okay.
filled with emotion. My son and his partner are in the process of dissolution of their marriage. And it's so hard to witness, and it's so hard to see this person who has so much love and is a pretty spiritual person, being on the verge of like the anger is almost erupting, the sense of self, the lack of the self or the worth, the lack of self-worth at the moment is just like enormous for him. And I'm seeing, I just listening tonight about how, the ethics of, what we're doing, the middle road instead of taking, the extreme road, and just praying for him, that he will find his way, back to a more centered self. And then I think about okay, so that's his path that he and his partner are on. And then I have my path, who is the mother and the grandmother of the children, and what I can do. And I think about, the patience and the joyous efforts, and, what I can do and what I can offer. Oh, so just thank you for expanding on these tonight.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah. Glad you're able to be there for him.
Hey, John, will this particular one actually be, it's recording, I understand, I remember, I think, yeah, it says it's recording, and it's something that I can track down if I might invite him to just listen to the words.
Yeah. It'll get posted also on a podcast, just for this date, write down this date.
Yes, okay. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Everybody feeling okay with our... Right then. Yeah, that's good little wrap. And then next week we will venture back into the text. But I do hope that, as we recognize that these verses that are often said daily might just be the whole thing. Just might be exploring that. Here's, at least something very tangible that I can do today. And then, we mentioned Pasquale's wager. And just as that reference point, the idea that from his perspective, it was a Christian perspective, going all in, to that path and saying that there's basically no downside. If you die and you lived a good life and you feel good about it, and there's nothing beyond that, there's not a downside. But the other option is you might just go to heaven, right? And that's a very simplified version. But it came up in the context of not finding a downside to engaging in like these 6 perfections, not finding a downside. That if you on a path where you feel like there is life beyond this or not, there's no downside in engaging a path that could benefit you beyond it. And so Pascal's wager, very simplified version of that, but it came up in that context. So I did just want to wrap up that because started it, and then Keith gave me the answer. So yeah. But that's what I like about, for me, I'm all in. I'm a Buddhist, took vows. I'm all in. My wager's done. But what I think is really important is that most humans come to these teachings because we just want to suffer less and live a good life. And that's a very valid way to engage in these teachings. And there's no downside to that either. You're also watering seeds that might open up other things, might not. But if at the end of our lives we felt that we lived well, that to die without regret, I think it's a well-lived life. So, all right, let's go ahead. Those who care to can join in a short dedication of the merit that we have cultivated here. Could have been doing a lot of things on a Wednesday night. Here we are, helping each other, supporting each other as we learn how to live more fully, more wisdom and care and compassion, and to reduce suffering in our lives and the lives of others. So let us dedicate the merit of this time together for the benefit of all sentient beings. May they be free of suffering and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may be liberated from the sufferings that we've endured and recognize our ultimate nature. All right, let's dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Om Tare Tu Tare.